On a Monday, I am waiting. On a Tuesday, I'm fading. And on a Wednesday, it's time for the Corkboard Chronicle. How's it going? Yeah, Caroline doing the Ashley
Do my
Simpson,
Ashley Simpson dance.
the what else do I do? What do we do now dance. I love it. How you doing, Caroline? Welcome.
I am doing great. The
Yeah,
Eagles are going to the Super Bowl, so I am doing great for the next 2 weeks.
Caroline, we as America need a favor from you.
I know.
Okay? Those Eagles got to bring it home this year. You know what I'm
I
saying?
know.
We
You're
can't
telling me.
we can't accept a three-peat. Let me tell you, I saw a tweet. I saw a tweet the other day that was like, Chiefs are going to win the Super Bowl. Travis Kelce proposes to Taylor Swift and then
Yeah.
immediately retires.
Yes, I did
That's
see
it.
that.
And I was like, unfortunately, extremely likely outcome. Regardless,
Yeah. Yeah. One
talk
of
about.
our O linemen has a penchant for punching
Uh
uh defensive players,
oh.
so that's not gonna go over well
No, not really.
with the Chiefs.
Yeah, exactly. Refs are gonna be watching that close. Woo.
Yes.
Even just the attempt, even if he doesn't make contact.
They're gonna flag him
15.
for thinking mean thoughts.
Exactly, right. What was that? What was that? What was that bad energy I just picked up from your offensive line? Yeah, so fly Eagles fly. Um, here we are again, a
Yeah.
2023 repeat. Let's run it back. Except for the outcome. How about that?
We were so close last time, and I think our
Yeah.
team is so much better. So I think we have a really good shot.
Saquon could carry, could be the thing.
I need
The
a
X
couple
factor.
really good Saquon runs.
Yes,
Yeah,
for sure. I think
we
you'll
could do
find
it.
some. I think you'll find some.
Hopefully.
Anyway, we're hopeful. We're hopeful on this podcast, even though Taylor Swift, friend of the show,
Yeah.
not our show, the real one, the reason we're all here. I don't like the idea, personally.
She's from Philly, so in
Right.
theory, either way is okay for
She'd
her.
be okay either way.
Yeah.
Maybe if Philly wins, she proposes to him.
Exactly.
That's how it's gonna go.
They have a bet going.
Yeah, it's like, who's it gonna be? Who's it gonna be? So anyway, the reason we're all here today, there's been no further announcement other than there was a bumper in the Timothy Chalamet episode that confirmed what we already knew. Here comes the 50th anniversary special, live on NBC and from Radio City Music Hall on February 16th. But the reason we're all here today is because we want to talk about a little production that aired yesterday, or yesterday from our perspective, Monday, between 8 and 11. It was, ladies and gentlemen, 50 years of SNL music, produced by Questlove, which is fun.
Mm-hmm.
Caroline, what'd you think?
I loved it. I could not have had more fun.
I had an absolute blast right off the bat. When people are able to do this, like these mashups, and especially bringing in so many different eras and so many different performances, I'm going to watch it again after we're done recording here, because it's like I need another look at it. It was the small turns of it too, right? Like, I think one of the parts where like I gasped was like they'd laid the groundwork for this like beat. And so it starts with whatever song. I wish I had it in front of me, but it starts with whatever song, and then it split screens in another song that has that beat, and then between them both comes Florence and the Machine. And I was just like, we didn't even hear the Florence and the Machine, like, we didn't hear Dog Days Are Over. We just saw them clapping along, and I was like, God, this is so good and so just perfectly layered. I'm still in awe over it.
It was an incredible opening, and I was sitting there the entire time, and I need him to answer. Did Questlove do that himself?
I don't know how proficient he is in like the editing, but I feel like if he had to lay down the mix of it, that I feel like I don't know, that took a lot of musical prowess to
Yes.
be able to like, and a familiarity with not only the artists that performed on SNL, but the songs that were performed.
Hmm.
And because now we know, we saw the interview that Questlove did on the Tonight Show, where he said he watched every single SNL um, to prepare for this documentary. Like, I feel like there was only one person qualified to really take the creative lead on that open, but
Yeah, I'm wondering if he made his list of what songs came
mhm.
in when, and then kind of handed it off to the editors and went, "Okay,
Yep, okay,
make this
let's
for
try
me."
this out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and and then you think it's over. There's interviews
Yeah.
that start coming up, and then we launch. It starts with Taylor Swift, and then we launch into a much more like lyrical
Hmm.
version of the same thing. The first one was very beat driven, and then it was very lyrical driven, and um,
Yeah.
oh my god, it was amazing. And it's like, I feel so silly when people pull that kind of stuff off, because have you seen that's like a comedy routine that these two British comedians did, that's like the four chords,
Yes.
and they just
Yeah.
sing like 25 different songs, one right into another, that have the same chord structure. I know that it's a thing, that like there's only a certain number of ways that any pop song can sound, but like when they're hitting us with like a Tina Turner song, and a like I don't even remember all the things that were featured, and it's just like six or seven add-ons to this same motif. It's like, oh man, it just keeps coming. It's just so
Yeah.
good. It was so good.
It
Um,
was.
yeah. Again, I gotta watch it again as soon as we're done today. um, but yeah, I wrote this in the thing. This montage would go wild in the gay club. It would just, I mean,
I think,
everybody to the
yeah.
dance
Yeah.
floor. Yeah,
I might just listen to it, just
yeah,
to have, just walking around, sitting at
right.
work.
If you look at it, I mean, that speaks to what the reason this whole documentary is here, is it's like SNL is such a time capsule. Uh, Lorne Michaels, who finally sat down for an interview for one of these things,
Yeah. Yeah.
talked about it, where he's like, we are trying to reflect this moment, and so yes, it's a montage of music on SNL, but it also serves as a montage of music. Period.
Right.
50
Yeah.
years of music.
Yeah.
Um, it's fascinating. So good. Um, anything else from the opening? Because yeah.
I could talk about it, but I could talk about it for hours. Just
Uh-huh.
sit there and pick apart every single
Right.
thing that pops up. But the takeaway is that it was just like a feat of editing, and I think a lot of time and care went into it. And
Yep.
I don't know what I was expecting the opening to be, but I mean,
Mhm.
it, surpassed expectations.
It was perfect. And
Yeah,
now
it was
I'm
great.
thinking of, like, you did have these moments of separate decades, separate generations
Hmm.
being layered on top of each other, and then like it was even more impressive, not even more impressive, but it was like also impressive when they would put two artists side by side who were famous at the same time. Like,
Yeah.
there was a section of the montage where it was like NSYNC and who was
Wasn't it Destiny's Child?
yeah, NSYNC, Destiny's Child, and just had to look it up, but Dido, who sang the like interlude in Eminem's "Stan," I think that's what
Hmm.
that clip is from, is that performance. Um, all of those like mixing together very well could have been from the same year, even, or at least within 2 years. Gosh, it was cool. It was just amazing, and
Yeah.
getting to mix that variety in, of like, we're not just gonna put 70s on an opposite track with 2010s. We're gonna do, like, sometimes these could have very well been back to back weeks. Sometimes
Hmm.
it's the same genre, or like, boy group, girl group kind of thing. It was just, oh, if you haven't seen it, folks, just go find it for the love of God. So good. Anything right off the top of your head that, like,
Yeah.
stuck out. We don't necessarily have to go in order. I just wanted to talk this out because I was so
Yeah.
impressed with it.
Yeah. I think there's lots and lots to cover in here, but the first
Yeah.
thing I have written down past the opening was that Lauren did a new interview.
We thought it wasn't possible, folks. In 4 episodes of the Peacock documentary, nary a mention from new Lorne, and
Yeah,
Questlove says one word, and Lorne says, "Where do I sit?" You know?
exactly. I mean, yeah, it was nice to hear from him.
Yeah, finally good to get some like new insight from Lorne Michaels. And one thing that I think maybe my most surprising, there were I have two surprising Lorne Michaels moments. One was that when they're talking about Sinead O'Connor and
Hmm.
the moment of tearing up the picture of the Pope, I laughed out loud because they show Lorne being interviewed, and he's like, but essentially, I'm paraphrasing here, but he just goes, "I kind of thought it was awesome. Like, I thought
Yeah,
it was great."
they all said that. Like him, Al Franken, like everybody who was talking about it was like, I don't know, it was kind of cool.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's a little bit. I mean, it could be a little bit of revisionist take from
A
him.
little,
Like,
yeah.
I mean, we can't know for sure, but just not what I expected to hear from him on that topic.
No, because I feel like the prevailing opinion that people think that they have is that, she got banned from the show and, they hate her because she did that. And it doesn't seem like that now. I don't know, maybe that was true at the time, but
Well, the very next week, I mean, it helped that that was the tone on the very next week. It was one of those
mhm.
scenarios where, like, the Ashley Simpson moment is another where Ashley Simpson thing happens, and then it's referenced nonstop the following week, which it was. And then
Yeah.
this was similar, where like there were several jokes throughout the episode, and one of the biggest ones, um, Joe Pesci like said if she had done that on his show, he would have given her such a smack. And and then like he tore up a picture of her and
Right.
pieced together the one of the Pope, and it's like she had legitimate grounds for protest here, but it's
Right.
1992. It's Sinead O'Connor against the Catholic Church. It's just not, you know, it was not set up for her to win that fight. And now that, we've all aged and learned some things
Mhm.
about what was actually going on, it's like, Sinead had a point.
Well, that's what Al Franken was like. He was kind of right.
Yeah,
I was
yeah.
like, whoa.
I think that's the prevailing thing is like, but it's like they talked about in the documentary. That was abuse she experienced.
Right. It was a personal, yeah. It was
Yeah,
like a stance coming from a super personal place.
yeah,
But yeah, it was interesting. And obviously, we'll never know for sure how they all felt at the time. And if
yeah.
this is like, it's been however many years and they kind of
Hmm.
see it differently, or if this was how it was the whole time and they just didn't want to. I mean, obviously, they wouldn't have wanted to come out into the news and say, I don't know,
Yeah, yeah,
if she
yeah.
wants to.
I thought it rocked in 1992. The next day,
Right.
going like,
Right.
stand by it.
Lauren goes on someone's show and is like, it was kind of cool.
Yeah, they burned down NBC. Like
Yeah.
it would be bad. Yeah, who knows? And it could go both ways with Lauren, right? Because like that's his background. His background is countercultural,
Right.
um, like politically sound and outspoken comedy. And so it's easy to forget now that he's at the top of this like institution that is his background, and
Hmm.
protest language isn't something he would, at least in his past, have ever like discouraged.
Right.
But it's hard to remember that while realizing how powerful of a figure he is. It's just interesting.
Yeah. I mean, I'd like to think that, at the time, everybody was mostly just mad that she changed the plan,
Right.
but not as much like what she did.
Yeah. And the other thing that surprised me was blatant admission from him that like it was in the context of the reputation that SNL has for like banning people, and
Yeah.
they never walked the stage again. And he's like, I read these things, and I'm like, we don't do that. Like, I have never sat someone down and said, you are hereby banned. But but what he followed that with is like, he said, I think I'm speaking verbatim here, we are that crass that we will just go after what is hot and what people are talking about. And if that's from somebody that maybe we have had controversy with, we'll still invite them. They might
I
not come
mean,
back, but we will invite them.
clearly it took a while. I mean, and maybe he's not banned anymore, but the whole Kanye section, like
Hmm.
clearly they're a little bit lenient with people
Yeah,
who are difficult or do something that they don't like. Because Kanye fully left the studio and
right.
Lauren had to go chase him down, and then he still came back another time,
Hmm.
you know? So, I mean, yeah, clearly the reputation that SNL or maybe just specifically Lauren has that someone messes up one time and then they're never allowed back in the building.
Hmm.
I think it was nice for him to just very blatantly say, well, no, that's not true. We don't, that's not how we view it.
Hmm. Because if you think about the people who like have done something insane and they've not been back on, um, you're talking about like Adrian Brody. I've seen that clip going around today,
Right.
introducing Sean Paul.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Kanye West hasn't been back on since 2018, since the whole
His
the
speech
yeah, the speech.
that we got
Um,
like full footage of, which we can talk
right.
about that later, but that was crazy.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And then like Rage Against the Machine, I don't believe they came back. Let me check my
I
facts on
was
that
wondering
live.
because it was interesting to have Tom Morello in the documentary.
Hmm.
But then he tells this story that makes it sound like no one would let them back into like 30 Rock ever again
Yeah, and
for like legal reasons.
right, and but the through line with all of those things is like, and then Sinead O'Connor, that being the last time she
Yeah,
appeared. Um, the through line with all of those things is a premeditated, essentially sabotaging of
right.
the live air. You can do whatever, but if you disrupt the broadcast in a big way, we can't trust you anymore.
Yeah,
I think that's more how they view it, rather than like, if somebody did something controversial, like, we're gonna shut them out. Like they showed Kristen Stewart slipping
yeah,
on air. She hosted again in 2 years. It's like these things that people think like, oh, SNL's never gonna forgive them. They do, um, but I feel like it's on a case by case basis, because the exception to the rule that I just said of like disrupting the live broadcast
mm-hmm.
was something they talked about in episode 4 of the Peacock documentary, when Damon Wayans did
Yeah,
something completely different. Now that was a little less aggressive. It was like not something that affected the outcome or the timing
right.
of the sketch. It was just he did something a little bit different. Um, and then he's doing stand up by the end of the year. So, I don't know. It's you can't really paint all of it with the same brush, I guess, is the moral of the story.
Well, and I think the interesting thing about a lot of these examples of people who I think there's, the story around them is that they got banned. It's people who they did this thing on SNL and it was such a big deal that their careers took such a big hit
Hmm.
that maybe they're never in a position again where SNL wants to book them just for like viewing purpose. Like
Hmm.
Ashley Simpson didn't really have much of a music career after that.
Right.
So, why would she come back on the show? Same thing with
Exactly.
Sinead O'Connor in the US,
Hmm.
her career never really recovered from that. So
Right.
she never went back on the show, but I don't know that that was, it wasn't like she wanted to and they said no.
Hmm.
I think the opportunity probably never came up again where it felt like a good fit, but
Yeah.
you know, maybe it would have had her career not taken such a big hit
Yeah.
because of that.
it was a more macro shift in like cultural uh opinions of that person
Yeah,
rather
the
than SNL
audience
saying,
loses interest in them, so
yeah,
SNL doesn't book them anymore.
yeah, exactly. So it's like but then SNL can be like, people are able to write these like listicles and be like, well,
Yeah,
that was
they
the
never
last
went
time they were
back.
on SNL. It's like, well, yeah, but look at what else was going on and the they were going through after, these issues.
Right.
Um, but yeah, those, I think those were my two big like surprises, because like the first, uh, I feel like people's first criticism about SNL, when people who don't enjoy the show,
Hmm.
is that they are clout chasing and um, just regurgitate trends and stuff like that.
Right.
And to hear Lorne Michaels actually say in words that that is the
Yeah.
MO,
Yes.
which it always has been. I mean, that was the mission statement of the show. So you can't really, again, you break it down, it sounds shocking to the ears, but when you break it down, it's like maybe he has been consistent, and
Right.
like maybe that speaks to the success of the show. In good years and bad, the through line remains, which is we are showing what is happening right now, like it or not. Um,
Someone, I don't remember if it was Lauren, someone at one point in the documentary pretty much said, like, you should be able to watch an episode
yeah,
from any time in the past 50 years and know what was going on
hmm
in the culture at that time.
right. It does. That
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
possible. Like it is. It's a lot of fun to watch. Like that's part of why it's a lot of fun to watch reruns, because
Hmm.
it's just able to capture like you know stuff like that. That's why they made the show.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, just fascinating to be able to look back on stuff like that. I'm looking at this now after the whole montage thing. They asked everyone to sing the
Yes.
SNL theme, which it is funny to think about the fact that like every long running, like we all know what the Simpsons theme song sounds like, and it's been on for 30 years. Like you assume that a show that's been on this long has an identifiable theme song, and it doesn't.
No,
Changes
because
every night.
they said that and I was like, theme. I was like, is there one?
Yeah.
And I'm like, do they mean what plays during the credits, or like I was like, what theme? And then
Uh-huh.
they all start making their saxophone sounds.
Yeah, it's more of like chord progressions, and I think they had
Yeah.
Howard Shore on there talking about it, where it's like um it is meant to be improvisational. It's a reference to like
Yeah.
the comedy that you're about to see. It's like this rendition is only happening tonight, and then we'll do a different one next week, and it's
Right.
it's a lot like the show. Um, and what is fascinating is that very, very roughly, it is a similar progression through the music,
Hmm.
especially since Lenny Pickett has taken over.
Yeah.
But they do have these like variations on
Hmm.
it.
It is, yeah, it's a
Um,
little different week to week. You
yeah,
can,
yeah, yeah. And then
yeah.
and then even season to season, when they
Hmm.
change the opening titles, they got to change the music. And so we've had slow versions, we've had really, really fast versions, and um, it's just, but it is funny to actually make people try and do that. And then I keep talking about that Creating SNL YouTube series from years ago, maybe 7, 8 years ago at this point.
Hmm.
But the clip of Lenny Pickett being the last one, and he says, SNL theme sounds like this, and he rips it on the saxophone,
Yeah.
is originally was shot for that series.
Okay.
So it was like, even though I couldn't personally sing it, I've seen that clip of him doing that enough to where I probably could get pretty close to the clip they played.
Right. I guess, yeah, no one was technically wrong as long as they
Yeah,
tried something.
yeah, exactly. Be interesting to just try, like, What if you just sent Miley Cyrus out there to scat the
Right.
the SNL opening theme, like, and just absolutely change it, like no saxophone tonight, it's just somebody, like,
Yeah.
and
Acapella.
they're gonna do their best. Yeah.
Right.
Um, oh, where do I go next? I feel like we're gonna
I
be talking about
know.
this for 6 hours.
It's
It was
it's a
so
little
long,
it's a
so
little
much.
hard to go like in a linear
Right.
structure with it because it does jump around. It wasn't,
Hmm.
it didn't, started in 1975 and then here's how it's progressed since then. It didn't really do that. It kind of was all over the place.
Yeah.
Loose themes, but
Hmm. Right. I mean, should we talk about Ash? Is now the time for Ashley Simpson? Is it too early?
I don't think so. I don't think it's ever too early to talk about Ashley Simpson.
Because that when that segment played, I
Hmm.
immediately backed it up and watched it again. It was fascinating
It was.
to not only see that moment again, which if you haven't seen the thing as aired, there's a YouTube video that actually like has the whole thing, the whole performance, all minute 15 of it.
Hmm.
Um, but to have the director at the time, Beth McCarthy Miller's mic available
Hmm.
and reacting, and her and several other people in the room all screaming like, "Oh no! What now?" And the confusion of that. First of all, I like I do direct from time to time. Mostly it's sports, but God, it really like awoke every single memory I've had of that, of like something doesn't go the way somebody intended. We don't know what to do next, and we need help. Like,
Yeah.
I I can fade to black for sure,
Someone just,
but
yeah.
like if I'm Beth McCarthy Miller, I can absolutely fade to black and we can ditch this whole thing. But then we are putting out nothing.
Right.
The affiliates haven't started a commercial. We don't have anything on screen. I could do that,
Hmm.
but that's not my call to make. It's a
Right.
producer's call to make. It's the
Yeah.
network's call to make.
She's looking for someone to tell her, like, yes, do that, just
Like,
cut
are we
it.
continuing this performance or are we
Right.
not? Like, tell her to do this, to just sing the first song. And it's actually fascinating to hear that was Beth McCarthy Miller's suggestion. I will call her Beth for the remainder of this, but just know I don't know her. Um, uh, that was Beth's suggestion because that is what the band ended up doing. That
Oh, they
band was
did.
actually really solid because the song that was intended to be played was oh shoot, I'm doing some live googling again.
It wasn't because she did Pieces of Me first.
Correct.
So then it must have been her other big song. 'Cause I think there were only a handful.
So she was going to sing a song called Autobiography, which sounds like this. But that is not how Pieces of Me starts. But you can tell what I'm trying to say is like you can tell that the band started with a different song
Yeah.
and then eventually caught back up to the guitar riffs, the music of Pieces of Me.
Which is an odd, I mean, I guess the band doesn't know what to do
Mm-mm.
either. But I guess why didn't anyone just cut the track
And
and
started over.
start over? Like, I don't understand. It looked like they almost couldn't get the drummer's attention in the clip.
Mm,
But you'd think he would
interesting.
realize that, you think they would all realize that, like, the track doesn't match what they're supposed to be hearing.
I think he did. It was like I saw him like looking down,
Oh, was he?
and who knows if he was trying to shut something off and fix it because apparently the
Mm-hmm.
drummer cued the vocal
Right.
track.
Why make him do that? Why
I
was
don't
that
really
his
know.
job?
Yeah, I feel like that should be maybe a backstage kind of thing.
Everybody there knew she was gonna do that.
Correct.
So,
despite it being
yeah,
kind of a last minute decision. I imagine it was a last minute decision because
right, because she was sick
she
or
was sick and because like clearly the drummer didn't have the reps of
yeah,
hitting the right thing.
yeah,
But anyway, what's fascinating is like Beth's suggestion is what the band did. Had Ashley Simpson, and you know, maybe you get this with a more seasoned, an older
yeah,
performer who's going to be more casual about that kind of thing. If it's
yeah,
Ashley Simpson's second time on the show, maybe she's just like, wait, sorry guys,
right,
now let's go.
yeah,
Um, because without it being a seasoned performer, with the perspective that people had at the time of lip syncing, or what we
yeah,
then found out was like she was singing along. You could hear two Ashleys
hmm,
in there. Um, is that she probably felt in that moment when the music started and the mic is next to her, is fully by her side, that she's done.
yeah,
And like in a sense of this performance and in her entire career,
right,
which is an over exaggeration, but the very kind of over exaggeration people loved to do in the
yeah,
90s and the 2000s.
yeah,
Um, because like, but what I kind of attribute it to is like the Milli Vanilli panic of it all.
right, yeah.
When Milli Vanilli gets caught and canceled, it is like this rocket through the music industry of like, this can never happen again.
People took it super personally. They felt that it was like an insult to them
Yeah.
that these
And
people would lip sync.
right, like some huge betrayal, and so that
Yeah,
feeling remains throughout the 90s, throughout the 2000s, and this is the next big lip sync
yeah,
incident. There's been 13 years without an issue, and now it happened again. Um, so without all of that cultural pressure, without all
hmm,
the cultural fragments happening in that moment, again, maybe
yeah,
you do get a smooth recovery, but um, the director says play the first song. The band didn't hear her, but did it anyway. They were
yeah.
like, okay, we can pivot to that. Um, but Ashley Simpson said, it's over. I can't save this,
Yeah.
and
And
leaves.
walks off stage.
Um, and so crazy. But and hearing Beth McCarthy Miller's retelling of this, I'm upset that they didn't get her for this particular documentary.
Yeah.
Who knows why? But she was interviewed by the TV Academy a few years ago about this exact moment, and said about the um, basically what we heard in the documentary. She was sick; it wasn't going to work, and what she actually said in the interview was that she said during Ashley told Beth that during one of the rehearsals, she felt a pop in her
Oh,
throat.
yeah.
And the way Beth McCarthy Miller puts it is like, it's not like we're talking about Whitney Houston here. This is not someone who like
Who's
people
belting?
are not buying the ticket for the live vocals,
Right.
but we have to get this performance on. And I think that was the feeling around the building.
Yeah.
Was like, let's just do what we have to do. But like, what you talk about a really horrible year for Beth McCarthy Miller in particular, because you have the Ashley Simpson thing happening in October.
Hmm.
Beth McCarthy Miller also directed the Janet Jackson Justin Timberlake Super Bowl halftime show in 2004.
Ooh.
Again, none of these are her fault, right?
She just
Like,
is like there for
she's
a
just
lot
in
of
wrong
yeah.
place, wrong time,
Bad
man.
luck.
And talk about another issue that, like, with time and with distance, like, overblown, right?
Yeah.
I don't think we needed to rewrite the book of censorship on television just because there was one wardrobe malfunction for about 15 frames
Right, right.
of this Super Bowl performance, but both involving Beth McCarthy Miller.
Yeah.
Again,
Yeah.
nothing that she or either production had any control over. She talks about the Super Bowl moment in the TV Academy interview as well. And like there was the rip was supposed to happen 100%.
Yeah.
Everything was choreographed correctly. We saw it correctly as we saw it,
Hmm.
but it was supposed to reveal something else.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
a quick change of sorts, and
Yeah.
instead, whole thing comes loose.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, just a man, crazy. Beth McCarthy Miller. Hey, it's me. It's me. I've shown up in your algorithm. I would love to talk to you about the year 2004. And your illustrious Saturday Night Live work, MTV, 30 Rock, Parks and Rec, The Good Place, Unbreakable, all of that. Just come on by anytime you like. Huge fan. And so yeah, I think that's all I got on Ashley Simpson. It's in the same way that it's like, I guess culturally the Sinead O'Connor one made more of an impact, and I
Yeah.
understand people's response to that in the moment. But the Ashley Simpson thing was crazy. I'm sorry.
It was I think, a big overreaction by the
Huge.
general public for
Hmm.
what that was.
Yeah.
And if that happens now, probably not as big of a deal.
Again, like so many artists are singing along with a track
Yeah.
at one point or another. So, and we get that as a factor of live performance. So,
Right.
like
Yeah.
this moment could never happen again for good reason,
Right.
but it shouldn't have happened the first time either. Um, Again, if and Beth McCarthy Miller had a good point. If Mariah Carey has a lip syncing exposure, if Whitney Houston had the lip
Hmm.
syncing exposure, these are people known for their powerhouse vocals, and if that is revealed to be fraudulent, that's a more serious thing for their craft.
Right. Ashley Simpson was just doing pop music.
Right.
It was just a catchy
Right.
song. Like,
Yep.
it was just supposed to be, yeah, it was just supposed to be, and she was a new artist too.
Hmm.
So, but I think at the time, and probably now still, we're not super forgiving.
Yeah.
So,
It does. I mean, it's interesting to think about, like, have we changed at all? I like to think that people have a little more leeway, or like it rolls off
yeah.
more than it did in 2004. But I mean, with social media,
I think
it's
now, if that was going to happen, people would be more angry that she walked off stage than that she was lip syncing. I think that would be the big story.
right, right. Very interesting. Well, Ashley Simpson
Yeah.
went on to come back the following year. She was a musical guest with an episode hosted by John Heder in 2005. Went off without a hitch. It
John
was
Heder.
it was perfect. Yeah. So yeah, Napoleon
I
Dynamite
was gonna
came
say,
out that summer. You
where'd
want?
he go?
Uh huh. So anyway, yeah, there's there's our Ashley Simpson thing. What?
Yeah.
So talking about how it like really gave me flashbacks, because like anybody who does live directing with multiple cameras has a hot mic moment where you're confused, something went wrong, something's frustrating, and well, here's mine. Wait, what just happened?
I know exactly what happened.
Oh, I know what happened too.
As they hosted the Georgia Bulldogs, the senior
Lose the font. Get the font off there. It just happens, folks. You know what I mean? But yeah, God, I love hearing this behind the scenes stuff.
There was a lot of it. There was some really good
Mm-hmm.
additions
Yeah.
to stuff we've seen.
Right. One note I
Yeah.
will give is when Debbie Harry introduces the Funky Four.
Hmm.
They use a snippet of the director saying like dissolve camera one, and that is not the director at the time. That was Don Roy King, who wouldn't direct an episode until like 25 years after that
Hmm.
moment. So I was like, Come on.
Questlove.
Come on. You don't have to put that in there. And certainly somebody has tape of Dave Wilson saying dissolve camera one that they could have fake put in there. But
Right.
so yeah, I was just like, come on. But, but yeah, God, I love seeing like the other angles and recutting stuff, and it's stuff we don't get to see, and apparently it all exists. It's somewhere.
Well, I have a question. Maybe you know the answer to this. The
Mhm.
section at the end where they're talking about the Morgan Wallen,
Mhm.
Jack White switch, that last minute switch. There was a lot of backstage, behind the scenes footage of Jack White rehearsing for that performance, and it
Mhm.
was like shot really well. Was that for something? Did they put something out about that? Because it looked like it was very purposefully shot for some reason, but I don't
I
think I'd ever seen that footage.
I would have to watch that part again
Hmm.
because I can't. So this was stuff. This definitely wasn't studio cameras. It was like,
No, it did. It was speed. They were following him around, and like
hmm.
it was pretty intentional. Camera was definitely moving. And it was, yeah, weird angles of stuff, and it was at rehearsals, and yeah, it was just, I was wondering why they had that footage specifically.
Yeah. Um, I would have to watch that part again, but right off the bat, my first instinct is that because that was such a weird like history making season, quite frankly, like
Hmm.
they had audiences back before anybody else, even though it was
Yeah,
not many people. Um, that like immediately they were like, we're going to need to document what
yeah,
happens
that's what I
this
kind of
year.
figured. It was something that maybe just never saw the light of day in any,
Hmm.
type of structured way. But the same thing with they kind of followed Bad Bunny
Hmm.
in his, week as a host and musical guest, and there was a lot of
Yeah.
footage there too that I hadn't seen.
Right. So yeah, I think because at the end of season 46, which was the big COVID
Hmm.
comeback year, um, we get a extended stories from the show episode.
Okay,
Might be
yeah.
the last one they did, and it is a full on like half-hour documentary of what it was like to put season 46 together. So again, I think it may have just been that one may have been like an in-house project, um,
Probably.
or they hired out. But regardless, like somebody said, let's get this down
Hmm.
because this is crazy.
Yeah.
For the Bad Bunny performance, I would assume that this is the same documentary crew that made this documentary,
You think
whether it
they
was
specifically filmed it
because
for
like
this?
at that point, Questlove is 2 years into the preparation of this
Yeah.
documentary, and he probably knows that I'm going to do a segment on, combo host musical guests. Can I come by and
Right.
get some footage? Does make you wonder if you're thinking about the timeline of this and you realize we got Bad Bunny immediately followed by Megan the Stallion
Hmm.
being the host and musical guest. Are my facts straight here?
Well, didn't Dua Lipa do the same thing that season too?
Right.
Because that was
Um,
just,
season
yeah.
49. Oh no, I'm thinking of the previous year where it was Jack Harlow immediately followed by Megan the Stallion.
Oh, okay.
So conspiracy theory canceled, but what I was gonna say was maybe Questlove had some pull on the booking decision where it's like,
Yeah.
hey, I need more footage for the double duty part. Could we get can we get Dua Lipa
You
and
can
Bad
you
Bunny
book
in the same
another?
season? Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I just need one more. It's just that's it, and I'll be done. No, but so anyway, conspiracy theory canceled. I forgot that Megan the Stallion was the previous year. Um, but oh, sorry, it was Megan the Stallion first, then Jack Harlow. Um, but yeah, I think that's my answer for that.
Yeah.
Um, just because it was so weird that they were like,
Yes.
yeah, maybe, and it's very possible that like Mary Ellen Matthews' department includes a video team now. I mean,
It might.
she's so much a part of the show leading up the photo department that wouldn't entirely surprise me if they were like, well, we want to document this in other ways too.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Something to think about.
Yeah, something to consider.
Yeah.
Again, questions we'll have when we get Lorne Michaels on the pod.
Or
Jesus
Beth
Christ.
McCarthy Miller.
Or Beth McCarthy Miller. Or who did I invite
Melissa
last week? Melissa
Villaseñor. Terry Sweeney.
Yes.
I
We're
know
going
that
to
Terry
get a
Sweeney
running
could
list
give us
going.
too much insight onto this, but
In today's, he could tell us what it was like, what Edie Baskin was like.
right.
Let's see, what else can we talk about next? I think the Adele thing was huge, and she told that story in her SNL monologue. But what was cool was to get that piece from Bill Hader where he was like, we're all working upstairs in the rewrite room and rehearsals on the TV, and like everyone just kind of stopped.
Yeah.
Because we were like, what is happening?
Right.
Like something really good is coming this week. So that was a fun little layer to a story we're pretty familiar with, I think, at this point.
Yeah, I would say that's like the SNL musical guest story, at least of like the modern era of like the person whose life was changed the most by being an SNL musical guest, I would say. It's her.
I know it has happened before where someone gets in really early, but gosh, and in terms of like immediate household name.
Like truly overnight.
And lasting. That's the other thing. People will get an SNL bump, but it doesn't sustain.
Right.
This was like she literally never went back.
Yeah.
So just so cool. They showed a little bit of like the Nirvana promos.
They made me emotional.
Awesome.
I'm not a Nirvana person. I don't really have much of an opinion, but it did make me a little emotional, and Dave Grohl talking about it and everything. I think it was a nice segment.
Yeah, I do too. And it's interesting, like, why some bands and not others. I mean, Nirvana was a huge booking for them, I think.
Yeah.
Like, they were around already by 1992, so definitely not a situation where SNL's breaking the band.
Right. They were more capitalizing on their momentum that they already kind of had going.
Yeah.
But
it's very cool. I need to look it up and see if I can find it again. But years ago, this was like 2 or 3 years ago, I found a video on YouTube that was like the camera rehearsal, the Thursday camera rehearsal for Nirvana when they were on in 1992. Fascinating. I mean, like, because it was like maybe 8 minutes of just like rehearsal footage and like somebody standing in for Charles Barkley, like just some older stagehand guy. Ladies and gentlemen, Nirvana.
Ladies and gentlemen, Nirvana.
It was fantastic. That's what has been so cool about this documentary and the Peacock stuff is like we're seeing more moments like that.
Yeah.
The one that immediately comes to mind is Kanye West and Adam Driver and Kenan Thompson.
Oh, I've never seen two people look more uncomfortable and a third person look so pleased with himself.
Proud. So proud.
I hate that man. I really do. I'm not afraid to say it. Kanye, you can come on the pod and we can talk about it.
Out. Oh boy.
I can't stand him. I couldn't stand him before. And then everything just got like way worse. But God, he looked so smug. It made me so angry for them in that situation. And then that horrible footage of them all standing on the stage while he just like talked after, held everyone hostage.
Right. Well, like no one, and especially someone like Ego told that story in depth about her perspective on that whole thing, and it's like, someone like Kenan Thompson who knows, like, Ego's just got there.
No one told her like, hey, if you wanna.
Yeah, she hasn't interacted with many people. She doesn't know like the minutia. I mean, we know Kanye on a macro level, but in terms of like Kenan Thompson, for example, 15-year veteran at the time, having the presence of mind to go, this is not going in a good direction, I
Yeah.
gotta leave.
Yeah.
Ego was just like, I'm going to stand here until they tell me to stop.
Right.
Because she's a new cast member. She just got there. Yeah, I can imagine that being like, really like, what do we do now?
Well, and
Do
you have
we
to
stop this?
assume that Keenan knew because, as they documented in this, it wasn't the first time that Kanye had kind of gone off the rails a little bit at SNL. So, that's the thing. Ego, that's her first time interacting with him. Keenan's like, oh, here he goes again.
Right.
I know where this is headed.
That was an interesting kind of glimpse. I did not know that. I did not know that that Kanye almost walked out in 2016.
That Lauren had to chase him down and
Right. I remember that performance, and I guess the issue was that the full turning the full stage reflective was reflecting back studio lights. Was that the problem? And
that's what they pointed out, but was it just like an aesthetic thing that they just didn't like how it looked reflecting the studio lights? Or do you think it was actually like interfering with
I don't know.
something?
I would have to review that part, but like clearly there was a reason where they were like, we can do the top mirror, but we cannot do the sides.
Right.
And if lights were visible, then that would probably mean in certain positions in the studio, cameras would be visible as well.
Yeah.
So I get not wanting to keep that, but like that being the catalyst for like almost having no music that night, like is wild.
And I always wonder in situations like that, like what is the backup plan?
Right.
Do you just go to, a bumper for 3 minutes?
Yeah.
Or do you just fill the time with, get a sketch from Dress? Like what's the plan there?
Well, we had an incident like that
right.
in just this year with Stevie
with
Nicks.
Stevie Nicks.
If they don't recover, what happens? And I imagine, that may kind of be the reason that dress rehearsal is 2 hours. In addition to having room to cut, if you have to cut out the music performances, you're probably staging every sketch you put in dress rehearsal.
Yes.
Like I don't see much room for cutting at that particular moment. So, you got to assume that that's all that happens. It's just sketch, weekend update, sketch, good night.
Right. I don't know if that they've never truly like lost a musical guest.
No. The only time that I think has ever happened was when they cut Rage Against the Machine's second song.
Right.
When
they were there with host Steve Forbes.
What a combo! Who said? Like that's putting everybody like in borderline danger. You know what I mean? To put
also, like,
those two people together.
Come on, Lauren.
Again, but like gets people talking for sure. Gets eyes on the program. So in that way, I get it, but also like, okay.
I would have been irritated if I was watching, if I was like excited to see who the host was, and then it was Steve Forbes.
That's the other thing.
I don't know if I tuned into that one.
Yeah, and I think they're better about that now, because if you think about the crowd that Rage Against the Machine is gonna bring in versus the crowd, if any, that Steve Forbes is gonna bring in.
Yeah.
Very different. So you have like a split audience, one who's only here for the music and not going to give a damn about these sketches,
right?
And then one who's only here for the sketches and not crazy about the music. And I feel like they do a little bit better with that now, where it's like the one episode that comes to mind is Jenna Ortega in the 1975.
I was thinking John Mulaney, Chappell Roan.
John Mulaney, Chappell Roan is another excellent example where it's
they say, okay, do they overlap?
Yeah.
Can we get a lot of overlap? Yeah.
Right. These people are in the same community.
Right.
And so they will show up and be very passionate through the whole show.
Yeah.
But honestly, like on paper, here's the other layer to it. On paper, Steve Forbes with musical guest Rage Against the Machine is very funny.
Yes,
Like,
and
that's hilarious.
a part of me does wish that their roadies had won the fight with the SNL crew over the flags, at least just for the first like
Right,
second
just
of
for
the
a little bit.
broadcast.
Right. That was interesting to see because my impression was always that the flag made it. The flag made the broadcast, but it didn't.
It seemed. Did they show? Yeah, they showed footage from it right at the beginning of the performance.
They had like pictures of what it was
Right.
supposed to look like, but I think like seconds before Steve Forbes tossed to him, they managed to get the flag off.
Yeah, I think Tom Morello said
of
it
the
was like
speakers.
7 seconds or something.
Crazy. So there's a scenario where we're hearing somebody speak in the studio,
Mm-hmm.
but it's definitely not on like a headset microphone. So I'm
Yeah.
wondering if that was picked up from like the microphone that was on Steve Forbes.
Probably. It probably was just like the crew freaking out and trying to get the flags off of the stage, and it was probably they were yelling probably loud enough that it
picked up
a little bit.
Yeah. Gosh, it's so interesting. This show's fascinating, folks.
That story was I had never maybe I'd heard about it, but I hadn't heard about everything that happened after when their guitarist, threw something in his family and then the Secret Service was there. I was like, oh my God, are you allowed to tell this story? Like,
right. Like, why did you think that was a good idea? Honestly.
That's,
bragging rights, I guess,
I mean, Rage Against the Machine, they have to.
They did.
He was raging against the machine. The machine being Steve Forbes of Forbes magazine.
Forbes. It's crazy. Billionaire Steve Forbes. I want to come host SNL. Yeah, the machine.
Probably,
for sure.
He's probably just good friends with Lauren. They probably golf together.
Yeah, for sure. We had an extended Lonely Island segment. I'm gonna let you take the floor on this one.
Something that's deeply important to me in my life is that version of Andy Samberg with his long hair and his little glasses.
Now, important in what way? Could you care to expand on
all
that?
All of them. All of the way. Yeah.
Looking very respectfully. Yeah,
my
that kind of
ideal man at every way he looked. I've been like, yeah.
Right.
That's for me. Like, that's, yeah.
Yeah.
I know that we're getting a lot of content about them from their podcast. I will watch them tell these stories as many times as I can. I will listen to them talk about the exact same stuff for hours. I don't care. I just want to see them all hang out. I wish that they could have all been together, but I am positing that perhaps Jorma was in Finland when Andy and Akiva did their interview.
Yeah.
I was a little bummed that they weren't all together, but it was nice that we got to hear from Jorma a little bit.
It was a big theme of the podcast for sure. Was like Jorma being in Finland all summer and into most of the fall.
I would say that was the very first episode of SNL I ever watched, like as it was happening. It was probably the first episode I ever watched was the Taylor Swift episode in 2009.
Sure.
And I haven't missed one since then.
Yeah. Nice.
But that was kind of like the sweet spot for the Lonely Island. So, I mean, it's just like so deeply ingrained in me and so like my sense of humor.
Now, do you remember what, if any, digital short aired that night? And I'm going to look it up to check.
I don't know if it was a digital short. Let's see. I know there was a pre-tape that was the Twilight parody with the Frankenstein, but I don't think that was technically it. I don't think that was a digital short. I think it was just a pre-tape.
Correct.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Is it billed as a digital short, or is it just...
No.
No, it's just a pre-tape.
It is called Firelight.
Firelight. Yeah, Bill Hader was
trailer.
a Frankenstein.
Yep.
I could tell you pretty much every sketch that happened that night. Was there a digital short?
There was not.
Okay, that's why.
So, Yep,
I would
that's why you don't
have
remember one.
remembered because
Yeah.
I do remember a couple weeks later Taylor Lautner hosted, and that was the first time that they did Keenan as Reba. And then after that, they did a digital short with Keenan as Reba. That was
Keenan as
later.
Reba was in a live sketch.
He showed up in the monologue.
The monologue.
Because Taylor Lautner makes a joke about, I'm dating a very well-known country singer, because he was
Country
dating
singer,
Taylor,
right.
but then it cuts to Keenan in his Reba wig.
I do remember
And
this.
then
That was before the digital short?
I believe it was. I could be wrong.
Let's confirm this, because that would actually be really funny if the Reba wig came first and the digital short was
I do
second.
kind of want to say that was the first time we saw Keenan as Reba, but I'm not 100% on that.
More on-the-fly research, because this is so fascinating.
This
if we're
was
onto something here.
deeply, deeply formative to me. I could really pretty much walk you through that entire episode.
Yeah,
but
I have a few like that too.
I won't. But that was like what got me hooked, and that was kind of Lonely Island's like time.
Gotcha. The digital short did come first by like a month.
Oh, okay.
Actually, hold on. It was like 2 episodes later we get the Reba appearance in the crowd in Taylor Lautner's monologue. 2 episodes. Close though. That was that made me wonder. I was like, oh, that would be so funny if like.
Well, because I think they only did it those 2 times, and then it never happened again.
He did show up as Reba in the 100th digital short.
Right.
He pops into camera and says, "I'm Reba."
Yes. That plays on a loop in my brain whenever I see Reba.
Reba.
That's what I think of.
Oh, that's so funny. Yeah. Okay. So that's your first one when you and then you never looked back.
That's when I
like
locked. I locked in there, and then I started going back.
Yes. Okay. So I am late to the party because the first one that I locked in on and never went back, never missed an episode, other than the final third of the Paul Mescal episode. Still haven't gotten around to that.
Someday.
It's one day, yeah. Was Jesse Eisenberg and Nicki Minaj in 2011. This is the second half of season 36. But I had seen some sporadically. I saw Betty White, obviously, who didn't at the time.
Yeah.
And then there were a few more like weird blips. I have a really bizarre memory of a cold open from 2002.
Okay.
Where it's the Winter Olympics, they're downhill skiing, and then because it's in Salt Lake City, two Mormons are skiing down the hill next to them and like pitch witness to them as they're going down the slope.
Oh, I don't remember that.
It was like it scared. I think the reason why I remember it is because it scared me because I was like. I remember seeing like, okay, this is like a bit of like they're going down the mountain and they're doing this. That's what I remembered.
Yes.
But then they looked into my eyes and yelled, and it scared me. And I remember it being really unsettling.
2002, you would have been like.
I was like 4.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's like weird moments like that where things stick out. And then every now and then, like, I'll rewatch an episode from 2008 or 9 and be like, "Ooh, I remember that being around," you know?
I haven't gone back really past the early 2000s because when I started trying to go back, when I watched the Taylor Swift episode, I was like, all right, what's all this about? And at that point, I had seen Mean Girls, so Tina Fey is, it's percolating.
Right.
So I go back and watch it, but you could only watch it on Netflix. And when you got back to like 2000, the episodes were like 15 minutes long.
Yeah.
Because everything else got copyrighted.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So it took me a while to get more from like that era.
So then what was the moment where like it was no longer Taylor Swift bringing you to the show? It was like you're showing up day to day. Was it seeing Andy Samberg for the first time?
It probably was like the Lonely Island stuff. I don't quite remember, but It probably was the Lonely Island stuff, because that
Yeah.
got me pretty much right away.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I think it was like, again, there was just something about that like spring of 2011 that really kept me coming back. And then like people like Dana Carvey hosted during that time, and I'm like, who the F
Yeah, who is that?
is that? And then so that introduces me to another piece of history of the show, and then, you know, again, never looked back. And I think what really solidified it, which was like, okay, I'm gonna be watching this for a long time, was when it was the Tina Fey episode in 2011. Osama bin Laden had been killed that week, and the first sketch of the night is a Little Mermaid scene.
Yes.
Where Keenan as Sebastian the Crab is singing like Under the Sea, and then the body of Osama bin Laden drifts down onto him.
Yeah, I remember that.
And I was like, that is incredible.
Yeah, I can't believe they're doing this.
Yeah. And it's just something about it was so mesmerizing that's like they were taking real things and restaging it in a different way, and it was like it was something that you had to know about.
Yeah.
And it was like you were kind of rewarded for getting that inside joke.
That is why I liked it so much, is because whenever I got a joke, I was like,
right,
I'm paying attention, like I'm being rewarded for knowing this. And other people know it too. It's not just me. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I'm in a little club here, you know.
Yeah.
But like because it is truly an inside joke. The way that story is handled in the sketch, they're not directly referencing before the sketch starts. Like, remember when Osama bin Laden was tossed off a boat by the Navy? Yeah, it's not directly referenced, but it's like you get it. And it was like the first time that like a reference like that had really landed and stuck with me. And so I was like, this is amazing. I'm here. I'm sat. Good time. I don't think we'd ever talked about our history.
That's so funny that we didn't touch on that ever. But
got into this world, but it's just so much fun. Again, it's just fun. If you don't have people on Twitter in your ear telling you that it's stupid and dumb, it's so much fun, actually. You know what I mean? Like, they are wrong. But I think people like us who really appreciate the show, that's what they appreciate about it. We appreciate the inner workings. The content that actually makes it on screen, for people who really get into this and really watch it, almost is secondary.
Yeah.
But what's always on my mind is like, how did this come to be? What was the thought process behind this? And that's what makes it so much like crunchier to think about versus just like, that sketch was stupid. You like that show? Like Elon
SNL
Musk playing Wario.
Funny.
Yeah, Elon Musk playing Wario, that's what you like? It's like, no.
I don't like all of it.
They didn't either. You know what I mean? Like,
very publicly.
Yeah, nobody liked that one.
No.
2 weeks after that sketch aired, Cecily Strong made fun of it
right
on SNL.
Yeah.
So stupid.
Oh, new behind-the-scenes footage from Dick in a Box.
Huge.
Say thank you, Questlove. Oh my God.
Thank you, Questlove.
Like, why haven't we seen that? How have I not seen that before? It's just been sitting somewhere. Show it to me.
I want to see Maya Rudolph unable to contain her laughter when the rose is being stuck in her face. Like, that's valuable information.
Yes. And I loved the ability for them to be like, we wanted to frame it like these, 90s hip hop groups, and then cut to those groups performing on SNL. It's like, well, here they are. It's the same thing that they did earlier, where Fred Armisen's talking about his wedding band reunion sketch, and then they're cutting to the bands that he's talking about
Yeah.
performing on SNL.
That's what's so fascinating about this. You don't have to leave SNL
Right.
to
Exactly.
see all of these things. Like there's a point where all of this came from, you know?
Yeah.
What I loved that I think is a part that's kind of overlooked for at least as documentaries go, but like they had, and I think the advantage that they had was they were doing a documentary about all time SNL, like music performances and everything. But you had new cast members talking about, these are the sketches I couldn't get out of my head.
Right. Yeah. Oh my God. Sarah Sherman talking
Yeah.
about that Fred Armisen sketch. It's not the obvious choice for her, but it makes so much sense that she loves
Oh,
it.
for sure.
You can see that. Like, yeah, it was cool for them, for the younger cast to be able to be like, I remember watching that when I was young, or I remember this from when it's like I mean, that's the beauty of the show being on for 50 years, is you can have people that have fully grown up with it always being just a part of culture. You can kind of see the through lines that, I don't know, it's just cool.
Well, there was a moment, there's several of these in here where, you know, Bowen Yang is talking about his experience of watching the Ashley Simpson thing as a viewer. Sarah Sherman is breaking down that sketch in great detail. She's like, yeah, Dave Grohl's mic wasn't working. Cut to, sure enough. And then Andy Samberg, there was a moment in the Lonely Island podcast where he was talking to Seth Meyers about seeing a sketch that Christopher Walken did before they were on the show that they really liked. It was the prank show, Pranksters.
Yeah.
Where, you know, Seth Meyers is this like Nickelodeon TV show host, like, I got you with a whoopee cushion, and then Christopher Walken is like beating people to death.
Right.
And submits that as a prank, you know.
Yeah.
But so that's another moment where it's like you think of Seth and Andy as contemporaries, as people who like kind of started at the same time, and then there's moments like that where it's like, no, Seth was on for a while, and so he was for 4 years until he worked directly with them. This like untouchable celebrity, he's on SNL, and now they're like peers. You know, it's just fascinating how like the cliche is stars, they're just like us, but legitimately that's how they start. They find these things, they can't get them out of their head, and they want to recreate it. Yeah. And that's how it develops. One important thing that I think is cool that every time I see the clip, I think about it. Another Creating SNL thing that came out a couple of years ago was they focused on the crane camera team specifically. And they said that everybody at SNL has been there for 30 plus years. Right. So the crew that's there now is the crew that, if you look really closely in this music documentary, you can see a cue card Wally with hair and a giant mustache and glasses. Look for it. I swear it's there. But these people have been there forever, and that crane camera team still, to this day, says that their favorite shot that they ever pulled off was the transition from the stage with the firefighters and Rudy Giuliani after 9/11 transitioning into Paul Simon's The Boxer performance. And I can't really blame them there. It's somehow you can't really define it, but it is impactful. Yeah. How like Rudy Giuliani stops speaking about the resilience of New York, the lights go down and the camera leaves and goes to the other set. Really fascinating, and really, like, again, that's Beth McCarthy Miller all over that. But so every time I see that clip, I think of that crane camera team still 20 years later going, that's the best shot we ever pulled off.
It is incredible. I mean, that's like also, if you're talking iconic moments in SNL history, like obviously that's like one of the ones, if not the one, maybe. But I mean, yeah, it's just, it is super impactful, and it is like a really defining piece of that era of SNL, of New York, you know, all that.
And a great episode too. I mean, that episode
Paul Simon.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love that man. I wrote it in
Yeah.
my notes. That turkey sketch, they put it in all the Thanksgiving specials. It's in there every year, and every year I love it. I love that song.
More of it.
I love the costume. I love his little thing with Lauren after. I love Paul Simon, and I love how like there's a handful of those people that have been involved with SNL kind of like the whole time. Those like musicians, him, Mick Jagger, Paul McCartney, that just kind of pop back in every so often. And yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And probably my favorite part of the whole turkey costume thing is like on the big note, the in Still Crazy After All These Years, like the wing goes up. It's just so silly. It's so stupid. It's great.
And him, but I did learn, I didn't know it was his idea. That was a new revelation for me in this. I didn't realize that it was his idea to do it.
Yeah. And it's such a simple thing, but it worked, and it lives on, Paul Simon in the turkey costume.
Yeah.
I guess because he was so serious of a performer. Like, he wasn't...
I don't think he was known for, like, being super lighthearted.
Right. Not till SNL, when, like, they kind of let him explore that.
Yeah, that is the nice thing about SNL. I think they talked about it in the documentary. It's like, I don't remember who was saying it, but yeah, it's like these musicians get to come and have some fun.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of you get to see other sides of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was like borderline emotional during the open and the close, when they're showing all these performances, and it's like, oh my God, I recognize so much of this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're like one of the things I really looked forward to during SNL, and I didn't at first. Like, if I didn't know the musical guest, it would tempt me to fast forward through it.
Right.
But when like Fred Armisen is talking about all these people he saw for the first time on SNL that like he stuck with, I'm like, yeah, we all did that. We all have those too. Like,
absolutely.
I had never heard of, like, you're talking about Alabama Shakes. You're talking about who else? I made a whole list here. Ellie Goulding was another one who was the musical guest on that Tina Fey episode I mentioned. Who was my list? It's just crazy that, like, Florence and the Machine was an SNL breakthrough for me.
It's like people that you probably wouldn't have otherwise heard, at least not for a while.
Mm-hmm.
It's people that were maybe not top 40 radio popular at the time. They were maybe just hiding under that. And then you watch them on SNL and you're like, well, maybe I'll check them out, or I like this song. And then, there's so many people that now are like so big and that I've been listening to for years because they got booked on SNL.
Yeah. And, for me, as somebody who, I always kind of knew I wanted to be in TV in some capacity, but eventually it kind of morphed, and like live stuff is what I like working on, live performance especially. Yeah. And it is so fascinating to me to really because I will really, really watch, an SNL performance, a late night performance, like anything, award shows, especially Super Bowl halftime shows, and it's like that draws me in. That's what I want to do, and SNL was a big part because, like, you saw an unedited performance every week. When something blew your mind on an SNL performance, with a camera move, with a cut, with whatever, speaking from personal experience, you sit back and you remember that literally did just happen. They pulled that off in the moment, and it's just fascinating. And so as it turns out, it's like music was one of the most impactful things on the show, and one of the most impactful things for me. Like, that's the kind of thing I aim to do in my career now, Yeah,
and I'm sure, and you think back to the inception of the show, like, they probably didn't mean to make it such a music, like, venue. for artists. Like I know they booked music guests and they booked really good people, but I don't know if they went into it assuming that this would be like the coveted
Mm,
TV
gig.
performance. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. The thing that like all artists, not all, but like a lot of artists want to do, the goal of
Hmm.
a lot of people. So it's cool that it's a show that was made for the purpose of doing comedy sketches, but it also has this like second purpose separate from that's been so impactful that we get a whole documentary about it.
Yeah.
About this
It
extra
was,
thing they tacked on.
yeah. It was fascinating to hear Mick Jagger talk about like what performing on TV was like
Hmm.
in the 60s, early 70s. Didn't I don't know if his facts are totally accurate that like every show you went on you could not perform live.
Right.
I imagine with the technology at the time that like keeping audience microphones on and doing quick transitions, like you think of something like the Ed Sullivan Show
Yeah.
where 7 acts are performing at any given time. Now we have the technology to power all of those instruments and power the lights and everything. They might not have had something that was able to be done that quickly.
Right.
So it does make sense that the only option we have is for you to perform along with a track.
Yeah.
And so yeah, like did they set out to become the go-to, or did they just I feel like Lorne's pretty aware and he knows what artists and comedians want,
Hmm.
and he created that environment for it to be fun for
Yeah.
them. It's what
Yeah.
they want to do. They want to actually put their music out,
Right.
instead of like fake it as just an extended advertisement.
Yeah.
So yeah, I hadn't realized that for sure. Yeah, let me see. Is there anything we missed here? I mean, I feel like we're kind of wrapping up the discussion on here. There's one thing I want to set the record straight on. It's something that was edited in an interesting way, but it like kind of muddied the water on Miley Cyrus's trajectory.
Yeah.
She was indeed brought on to host after a controversial moment. This was well after like Hannah Montana had ended, but she got caught like smoking weed, dancing on a pole, whatever. It's those
Yeah. It
kinds of
was
things that people make a
around when
huge deal about
she was
because
like
she's a child star.
19 and she had just, and then maybe, yeah, right around then she released her Can't Be Tamed album. And everybody
Yeah.
went, oh my God.
Right. What?
And then it
And
got way worse.
yeah. And so, but so she's referencing the time when, she was starting her, for lack of a better equivalency, Britney Spears trajectory,
Hmm.
in
She
like
chopped her hair
2011.
off and
Yeah. But so she's talking about that. She's talking about the 2011 hosting. What
yeah.
they showed was the post
Right.
MTV Robin Thicke
Yeah.
performance
Yeah.
hosting, which was her second time.
Right.
Not a huge deal, but it's like it's important. I feel like it's important in the story of Miley Cyrus, at least, to realize like it wasn't just she woke up one night, bleached the hair, chopped it, and went
Right.
went
No, it
off the
was,
rails. It was like
yeah.
she had been trying to break out of
Yeah.
the Hannah Montana like perception
Hmm.
for much longer than just the 2013 show. And it's hard to overstate how like already, like obviously in 2013 people really didn't want anything to do with her. Even in 2011 with the
Yeah.
long brown flowing hair,
Right.
they still didn't want anything to do with
That
her, and
was
that's an important distinction.
I remember she did when she released Can't Be Tamed, the album, she toured and I remember she came to Tulsa and I knew a lot of people that went to the concert whose parents were horrified
Hmm.
by, the concert and all the content. And then
Right.
I went to the Bangers tour
Yeah.
in like
And then it got
2014 and I
real.
was like, oh, that was nothing.
Exactly. Yeah. But that was just I love people telling their like extensive
Yeah.
stories on, we did get to see a couple of vignettes of individual artists rather than just like the overarching storyline. So I love the whole thing.
It was great.
And then right at the end, God bless him, Questlove got a shot of himself in the documentary and couldn't have ended better. Loved it.
Yeah.
One light note on the clip of Questlove in the documentary, that is from the episode hosted by Donald Trump.
Not the 2016 episode.
Also 2004. So yet another feather in the
Apprentice,
cap.
Yeah.
Feather in the cap of Beth McCarthy Miller's year of 2004.
Cool.
So, amazing.
She might just be bad luck.
No, I don't think so. It was, and I really study her style too, and it's funny because her style is so distinctive to me that like I have picked it out before.
Yeah.
There was a like, you know, obviously her SNL performances are so distinct, and then you see some of that, and even the Super Bowl halftime show from that year. But there was one time my friends and I were watching Legally Blonde the musical. Ironically, we were watching it illegally, but MTV or something like that had done a TV taping of the Broadway show. And I'm like, I'm watching this and I'm going, this all feels really familiar. And I look it up, and guess who directed the TV coverage of that musical? It was her.
Nice.
And so, yeah, she's a hero. Love Beth. And so far, in all we got to see Liz Patrick too, who's the current SNL director. So now Don Roy King is the only living SNL director. There's only been 4 to not get interviewed in these documentaries, which I find really interesting.
Yeah, I wonder, how old is he now?
He was already in his 70s.
He might literally just like cannot be bothered.
I mean, that's a very good point. He lives in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. He's 77.
I was gonna say maybe he pulled a Don Pardo and moved to Arizona, but
yeah,
guess
maybe.
not.
But yeah, I just I don't know. I look up to all of them clearly because it's just what I do. But I think we've done it. I think we sufficiently covered. Unless do you have any other notes? Should I put the picture back up on the screen?
Oh no, let me get off 2. I don't want to call them complaints. I just want to. I need to note them on the record.
Sure.
I like him a lot. I do. Why was Phineas sitting next to Billy? Why was he there, sitting next to her during that interview?
Because she was a musical guest in Christmas 2023.
I get that you guys are like creative partners, but let go a little. Like a little. Yeah. Like it's okay.
Yeah. You can yeah. A little looser. Yeah.
And then my second thing is just that I don't know what was going on with Jack White's hair, specifically in the like talking heads that he was doing.
Yeah.
Because when it cut to him doing other performances, I was like, yeah, fine, Jack White. I don't know what was happening with it. I didn't like it.
It is a particular look.
It was a little too short, and it was like
yeah.
I just have to note it because I'll go crazy if I don't.
That's I'm glad we got that on the record.
Yeah.
Jack White.
Sorry, Jack White.
Algorithm.
Sorry.
If you're seeing this, this is your invite.
I also have weird haircuts sometimes. It's nothing personal.
Yeah, I have one right now. Yeah, nothing. I have other like weird things. I'll just pick out a few. Like, I don't immediately recall why Justin Timberlake was present on the night of the Single Ladies sketch, because that was not a night.
He was on Update too, but I don't.
Did he do a Weekend Update segment where he was like, "Here's what I would have done if I was SNL host this week"?
That sounds right. Maybe he had to pull out for some reason.
Yeah, there was a scenario like that, and he was like, "I could just do an episode right now."
Yeah, that probably is it.
So that is probably why he was there. And then Hal Wilner getting like a lot of extended
Yeah.
interviews was very cool. If you're unaware, he passed away of COVID during 2020. Um, uh, oh, this is something I feel like I should mention is the number of early 80s performances in this really surprised me because not necessarily that like they wouldn't have been able to get these bands, but kind of what you were saying earlier, where it's like we don't immediately think of SNL as a music show.
Right.
It didn't start that way. It started comedy forward. I would imagine, at least in a close second would be music, but to see that in the early 80s when the show is just nothing but struggles.
Right.
The music didn't waver during that time.
No,
they never struggled to get bookings.
They were getting some good people.
Yeah, so it's really fascinating that it's like maybe that era is what kind of solidified the perception that this isn't just comedy. It is truly like a place you kind of have to stop through if you're a musician.
Yeah.
So I just found that really cool. And then the Funky Four story, I did not know that was the first rap performance.
I had no idea.
National TV. Very cool.
Yeah.
Let's see, what else is there? Kanye 2016. Magnum.
Conan was in there. Was that
Conan was in there.
Was that new? Was that from something else?
New.
Okay.
No, it looked like a new
He was
interview.
Like barely in it. So I wasn't sure if it was just like pulled footage from something else.
It looked new. I mean,
it did. He looked like he looks right. Like it looked like current Conan. It didn't look like 10 years ago Conan or anything. So
they didn't pull a episode 4 of the Peacock documentary and pull from 10, 20 years ago. I think I'm ready. Ready. And I think we did it.
We did it.
That's the documentary, and like, man, we've just been learning. I've been learning a lot, and I felt like I couldn't learn more about this show.
Season 50, it's delivering.
It is really, honestly, delivering. I see it all as a package, from the movie, from like Saturday night, to this, to the special, to whatever the hell else is coming, to the in-person experience, and I have an interesting update.
Okay.
I am still attending the in-person experience on February 2nd at 4 p.m., but I had a bit of a scare because the person I was going to go with canceled. And I was like, no big deal, because I've used One Iota before to go see like TV tapings, and it's very easy to swap people out. But for this, big warning came up and said, if you swap out a guest, then your next guest will have to confirm. But once you're confirmed, essentially, you'll be in the back of the line for the reservations. All of these events are already long sold out. So I'm like, I'm going to invite somebody else and then still not go?
Right.
And so like all weekend, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not going to get to go. What am I going to tell the loyal viewers of the Corkboard Chronicle who are depending on my boots on the ground coverage? But then I asked the support people if I got rid of the second ticket entirely, would that affect the reservation? And that did not.
Okay.
So, and luckily the person who I had invited to come instead can't go anymore either. So everybody's happy. We're all good. And I'm going alone to the SNL 50 experience.
I wish I could come. Oh.
I know. I'd host you. I'd be happy to have you.
I just can't swing it.
I know, that's okay. But and there theories abound about what exactly this is going to be. So there's literally no telling.
Yeah, I'm excited.
But you'll hear it here.
Yeah, I'm excited to hear about it.
Yeah. And so the next thing we have, folks, we might recap some episodes in the meantime. Maybe not. but the next big event, it was announced it was confirmed, I guess, on the Timothy Chalamet episode. The big anniversary special happening
Yep.
February 16th. It's probably going to be like 4 hours long, which
So
I'm totally fine with.
It's gotta be, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Immerse me.
Exactly, yeah. I was a little afraid with the music doc that I was like 3 hours, that's a long time, but it flew by.
They split it
I
up
didn't,
nicely.
yeah.
It was like each act explored a different aspect,
Right.
of the SNL music experience. So yeah, I enjoyed it a lot. And so
Yeah.
if you haven't watched it yet and you're like, Jesus, that's long, it is very doable, and it's really, really fun.
Hmm.
So look at us go. We did it again.
We did.
2 hours, probably. Sorry. Oops. I promised that wouldn't happen, and then now look at me. Yeah. Any parting words, Caroline, before we go?
Just go Birds.
Go Birds. Super Bowl 59.
No,
Headed to Philly.
this was a really cool thing to get to see. I'm really excited
Yeah.
that this happened. I'm gonna tell everybody I know to watch it. Most of them probably won't. But I told my parents to watch it because I knew my dad would like it, but I know they turned it off after an hour. Because I know they went to bed. Like I
Yeah.
know that they only saw an hour of it, but
Yeah.
I think that's okay.
Yeah, that's all right. Good times.
Yeah.
All right, bye everybody. I'm so good at outros,